rules and regulations to be on board a vessel, whether it's commercial or recreational. And the 3 more law enforcement officers for the entire Marine Sanctuary, and FWC supplemental funding has been cut in half in the past 3 years. The top 3 sanctuary managers were replaced for reasons we will never know, but they were under investigation for fraud, misuse of funds, abuse of power, and a hostile work environment. In 2015, the chair of the Shallow Water Working Group was relieved of his post for inappropriate actions. These actions delayed nearly 7 years of work formulating a general management plan. In the past 4.5 years, the sanctuary has not convened one single meeting with any of the working groups or user groups to formulate a new general management plan, or a restoration plan as it is now called. The decisions were made by a select group of insiders. Financials and science supporting the plan are outdated. Data from 2008 to 13 is being used to define the value of the commercial fishing industry instead of current available statistics. The commercial fishing industry is the second largest economic engine in Monroe County, valued at more than $900 million. The commercial fishing industry is the second largest employer in Monroe County, with 4,500 plus jobs directly related to the commercial fishing vessels. The sanctuary condition report to support the restoration plan is from 2011. That's ancient history. The sanctuary is relying on outdated assessments and analyses and not on National Marine Fisheries Service CDAR stock assessments, with the exception of spiny lobster and Goliath grouper. All of the key indicator species of snapper and grouper and other species have been recently assessed within the past 5 years and are considered to be in good to excellent condition. The language throughout that report is negative and speculative with regard to impacts from fishing. Invasive species, lionfish. The sanctuary has done nothing, with the exception of the past few months here, to formulate a plan to address lionfish. The sanctuary repeatedly blocked efforts by the commercial fishing industry to obtain what's called an exempted fishing permit to target lionfish. The permit would have allowed placement of traps, 100 of them, and throughout the year, targeting areas where there are known populations of lionfish. This is in an area where there are 350,000 lobster traps and 300,000 stone crab traps deployed annually. No one has a better knowledge of the geographical distribution and population densities of lionfish than the commercial fishing industry. Nearly 50 tons of lionfish were harvested as bycatch in 2016, and one fisherman in one season in 2018 harvested nearly 30,000 pounds of lionfish near Pulley Ridge, all as bycatch. Pulley Ridge is pristine. Billy Causey has testified to that on numerous occasions, even though commercial fishermen have fished that area for decades, targeting primarily red grouper.
Thank you, Bill.
Fisheries managed.
You've gotten your time. I'm sorry. Yeah, we got to keep going.
Can I have 10 seconds?
Yeah, 10 more seconds, and just please submit that to the regulations.
Our recommendations: make alternative 1 the no action preferred alternative, reconvene the working groups to address and update the restoration plan, update financial and science information to support all actions, and use the 60 coral protection sites developed under Spotty Lobster Amendment 11 to format any new closed areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stephen Leopold.
Leonard.
Oh, I'm sorry, Leonard.
Okay. Thank you for giving me this. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be heard. First, let me say my passion has always been the ocean. From the time I was a little boy and started watching Jacques Cousteau, I was hooked. In junior high, I took a year of marine biology and then again an additional year of marine biology in high school. I became a certified diver in 1977 at the age of 16. I've been an avid fisherman from the time I could hold a fishing pole in my hands. I've lived in South Florida since 1965 and moved to Key Largo as a full-time resident in 2010. I have fished, dove, snorkeled these waters for over 50 years. Last year, I sat for my captain's license and passed. I understand the desire to protect the coral reefs and seagrasses. However, I do not believe your proposal for the Upper Keys to create a 132 square mile no anchor zone is the option, nor do I feel it is fair to all the residents who enjoy the shallow water reefs for fishing and snorkeling. Since I moved to Key Largo in 2010, I have been out on my boat in your proposed area nearly every week, enjoying the shallow water reefs for both fishing and snorkeling. Here are some of my observations of the area. The fish population has been steadily increasing both in quantity and size, especially hogfish. More lionfish have taken refuge on the reefs. Many of the reefs have rope from lobster and stone crab traps. Other than stony coral tissue disease, I've seen very little damage. Reefs seem to be healthy, and many tropical fish are inhabiting the reefs. Other than the mini season, these reefs have very few boaters on them, even during the weekends. How will your proposed no anchor zone affect the Key Largo residents and businesses? Put a huge strain on the bait and tackle shops because no one can fish in the area. Hurt the dive shops and operators that offer snorkel trips. Hurt boat captains that rely on the area to live bait or fishing trips. Hurt boat sales, both new and used. Reduce tourism. Why come to Key Largo when you can't snorkel or fish there? Better go farther south or somewhere else completely. Force everyone who wants to fish or snorkel shallower water reefs to go into Tavernier or Islamorada, causing that area to become an overfished and at risk of anchor damage. Lastly, it will seriously reduce the value of everyone's home in Key Largo. Is there another option? I think I might have an idea that would allow people to enjoy while reducing the anticipated damage done to the area. Make the area off limits during mini season, just as John Penny Camp State Park. Do not allow lobster traps or stone crab traps in the area. Anyone who anchors in the area must pass a class, this could be online, that teaches them how to anchor properly in the area. Collect a small fee and use the money for more anchor buoys. In closing, I do not believe your 132 square mile no anchor zone is fair to the residents and businesses of Key Largo, as previously mentioned. My preference is to leave things alone, as I know the National Marine Sanctuary doesn't have budgeted funds to install thousands of anchor buoys. The FWC has publicly stated that they don't agree with your proposal and have already said that they can't enforce it without huge increases in manpower and equipment. Acts of God such as global warming, hurricanes, and stony coral tissue disease will continue to cause damage to the reefs, regardless of the proposed closure of the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My background, and I've been living in Key Largo for the last 45 years, and my background is, grew up in Miami, and I've been diving the Florida Keys since the 60s, around Carriers Fort, and I moved here full-time, like I said, 45 years ago. I was a county commissioner, commissioner on the Key Largo Wastewater Board, and I was also a director of Sanctuary Friends. You know, it's changed their name and so forth. I worked with George Nugent and the Sanctuary Board for years. But I feel that the restoration blueprint doesn't have its priorities correct. I think the priority should all be about water quality, water quality, water quality, starting with Lake Okeechobee, the outfalls from Monroe and Dade County, and Broward County. It's about water quality, I believe. That's what will change and improve the sanctuary. The sanctuary, since I've been alive and been in the water before it was a sanctuary, has been steadily going downhill ever since. And nothing that the sanctuary has done, unfortunately, has turned that around, that trend around. And this blueprint, for restoration blueprint, I think education will go a long ways to preventing reef damage by the users and boaters in the Florida Keys. I put a letter to the editor and proposed that we use a practical solution for that, which would be spa buoys, identify reefs that are no anchor zones. They do it now all the time. You put spa buoys out there that say no lobster gear, no lobstering. Well, just expand that, change the name, the placards and stuff like that, and put no anchoring. Nobody wants to anchor on a good reef that holds lobster anyways. You want to anchor in the sand. Put also buoy color-coded, potentially, buoys where you can anchor in a sand patch. That letter to the editor is posted on the Key West Citizen for they liked it apparently and posted it up there and haven't taken it down. So put spa buoys out there. They're all over the place. Make sure that they're on the chart. People will respect that. People will go there and you're helping the boaters do less damage. They don't want to do any damage. You know, but the no anchor zone and the blueprints, the way they are right now, the restoration blueprint to me is all, the emphasis is on denying access. And just denying access is not going to heal and make the sanctuary healthy. It's not going to do it. It's going to continue to steadily go downhill. And I've noticed that the pump out boat is been denied by Monroe County to pump out boats behind houses that are potentially livable. Who cares? They've got poop in it. Pump it out. Don't put it in the sanctuary. But because they're short of funds or whatever, there's 600 to 400 boats a month that are not getting pumped out. And we need to do stuff, practical stuff like that to make the sanctuary better. Alternative one, no status quo. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Gregory. I want to address a couple issues with the Western Sambos proposals, none of which involve lobster. But first off, in the document, I'm perplexed and confused by the proposals for Western Sambos. This is an area I'm familiar with. In one place it says, also, although Western Sambos Ecological Reserve is categorized as an ecological reserve, NOAA is including this zone type category as a SPA because regulations are similar. Well, they may be similar, but not the same. So that definitely is not a no action. And then later in the executive summary, it says, relative to alternative 3 for the Western Sambos, this continues to allow the current level of access to this area. Well, that's just not true because currently we can anchor within the Western Sambos Ecological Reserve. The only place we can't anchor is up on the reef top where there's mooring buoys. Now, what that demarcation zone is, I don't know. But in the inshore area, there's a string of patch reefs that kids go to, that people go to, that can't handle the waves on the outer reef. And so people go there all the time. So currently you can anchor in the Western Sambos Ecological Reserve, but the proposal in alternative 3 says no anchoring. And this is a 10 square mile area. This just doesn't make sense. You can't drift dive the area. You can't drift dive the shallow areas. The other thing I want to mention is the inshore area that's no entry zone or idle speed zone. That idle speed zone goes about a half a mile out from shore. And at first I said, well, this encompasses these patch reefs and they don't want people running over the patch reefs. But when you look at the chart, it stops before you get to the patch reefs. So what it will do is encourage people to go fast over the patch reefs to avoid the idle speed zone inshore. Now, this idle speed zone proposal that goes a half a mile out encompasses 1.5 square miles of the shallow part of the ecological reserve. It's a transit zone when it's windy and you need to get from one end to the other, and those patch reefs protect you from the wind and the waves. So, and then alternative 4, which has the entire reserve as idle speed and the inshore area is no entry, makes no sense whatsoever. So in regard to Western Sambos, I won't say alternative 1, but how about alternative 1 with his offshore lobsters? You know, expand it out. I'm not happy with that because that's a beautiful dive spot that I've been to, but as a compromise, it's something, you know, extend it out to the outer bar, but don't do the no anchoring or the idle speed stuff. There's no rationale in the document as to why these things are proposed. Why do you need an idle speed zone that goes a half a mile out from shore? It just doesn't make sense to me. So thank you very much.
Honestly, I'm not sure if I'm next or not, so I'm just going to kind of roll here.
Tom Ingram.
That's it.
You're next.
I got it. I couldn't see it from back there. I'm Tom Ingram. I'm the president and CEO of the Diving Equipment and Marketing Association, DEMA. We represent more than 1,400 businesses and more than 10,000 professionals in the recreational diving and snorkeling industries. And our goals include protecting the underwater environment while maintaining diver and snorkeler access to healthy dive sites. DEMA and the diving industry have always been supportive of national marine sanctuaries, including no-take zones and other efforts when there's good science indicating the need for the restrictions, and when non-extractive activities such as scuba diving are not unnecessarily restricted. We do have some concerns about the blueprint, and we've submitted written comments and data on these, and I'm just going to outline a couple of them. One is restricting shark and fish feeding. Peer-reviewed research does not support the need to prohibit using small amounts of natural food to attract sharks so they can be observed and photographed. Data shows these activities are not detrimental to the shark, and sharks do not associate these provisioning ecotourism activities with swimmers, kayakers, and others not directly involved in the shark feeding activity. Importantly, this restriction would also prevent thousands of divers from seeing these animals firsthand and becoming strong shark advocates. The proposal also makes little sense. Sharks could be fed, chummed to attract and kill them, but using the exact same feeding activity to observe and photograph them would not be permitted. We're also concerned about the restriction of the sanctuary preservation areas to Blue Star dive operators. We're very familiar with the Blue Star program and support it, but this really doesn't make the mark. The reefs inside the sanctuary are subjected to extensive fishing pressure, urban runoff, and marine debris from Miami, these same water quality issues that everybody's been talking about. And if restricting SPAs to Blue Star operators is the answer to these issues, it only makes sense to restrict SPAs to Blue Star fishing and Blue Star diving operators. But in our comments, we've proposed an outline of what we think is a better way: to require the use of an online consumer education program for fishing and diving in the SPAs, combined with a tag system similar to those that you find in preserve areas such as Bonaire. Consumers learn about the need for the protection, perhaps pay a small user fee, and obtain a verification tag allowing them to use the SPAs. As a market-driven solution, the education requirement and user fee would automatically reduce the number of fishers and divers using the SPAs and help in the restoration effort without excluding those willing to pay user fees and spend time learning about protecting the reefs, including private boat operators who are currently excluded now in this proposal. So thank you for the opportunity to submit written comments and to speak today.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jessica Levy. I've been a resident of the Keys for about 8 years now, and I am the restoration manager for the Coral Restoration Foundation. Also looking at this list, I think I'm the only female elected to speak, so not really sure what that says about me. But anyways, thank you for this opportunity. I've been watching the discussions and participating in all this regarding the Restoration Blueprint since it's released in August. And as I'm watching this discussion unfold, in my opinion, not acting is not an option. Some of the major concerns that have been voiced is that of external pressures like water quality and climate change. These are all very valid concerns and big challenges. What I want to encourage everyone to remember is that good, strong marine management actually helps build resilience to these big external pressures. If we can protect these local, very direct impacts, it actually helps our environment be more resilient to these bigger challenges, excuse me, that are much difficult to address. Another comment that seems to stem is from these negative voices is what has the sanctuary done for us in the past 30 years? They've facilitated mooring ball systems, they've implemented the Blue Star program, which has limited diver impacts, and it's been seen that they have a more positive impact than that of non-Blue Star operators. They've supported the sinking of artificial reefs as fish attraction devices. They've created the sanctuary preservation areas, which not only promote protection of key sites, it also helps with increasing size and abundance of fish populations, also helping commercial and recreational fishery industries. They've overseen and implemented an immense amount of science and research that helps us to understand more about our natural world, and they've been able to help make informed recommendations such as the need for a wastewater treatment system. They also support restoration efforts and support lionfish removal efforts. Essentially over the last 30 years, Sanctuary has kept us from completely overusing and abusing our natural system to the point of no return. And if we allow them to do their job, they will help us protect what is left for another 30 years. So to get to the point, what I specifically am in support of is the recommendations proposed in alternatives 3 and 4, those that are designed to create new and expand existing spas, particularly those that provide added protection for coral nurseries and restoration sites. I'm in favor of the alternatives that talk about no anchoring in Key Largo. This will help us remove the very direct and preventative type of damage to our coral reefs. Additionally, I am in favor of limiting commercial access to spas areas to Blue Star operators. In doing this, we will ensure that divers are better educated to limit their user impact to dive sites, as well as incentivize other operators to be role models and good ocean stewards. Thank you.
Justin Hopper, and then if we can get Brandon and Blair lined up next, please. Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Captain Justin Hopper. I own a company, Fantastic Charters in Key Largo. I've been down here, to make this real quick. I've been here about 40 years. I've been charter fishing almost 30 years now, growing up in the National Marine Sanctuary, Key Largo. Definitely watched a lot of changes in the years, you know, over the last 30 years. Everything from the water quality, reef damage. We know when the water quality with sun and all the other things have temperatures coming up. The other thing it's tough is we have an overpopulation of boats. The Key Largo Sanctuary has gotten so busy these days, and that's a big thing. I think we're fighting with the no anchoring and all the other things, but the problem is the access to National Marine Sanctuary. I know in the law enforcement stuff, I know a lot of the guys and stuff, they're so overwhelmed with the amount of boats. On a weekend, we have anywhere from, say, 1,000 to 4,000 boats a day on that sanctuary, you know, up and down the reef lines. So a lot of people are going down about the anchoring and on the reefs and stuff. I think it is a big deal. It is a big issue. You know, we need enforcement. We need a lot of education. We need a lot of stuff for the water quality. We're in there all trying to make a living. The charter boats, the fishing boats are one side of it. The dive boats are another industry. Then the recreational is a whole another entity involved in this. It's huge money. It's huge revenue for the Keys. If you shut a lot of this down, where does the revenue, where does the entity turn to? You know, what direction does it go? And I know you are doing a lot of feedback about all this. You know, I'm just throwing this from my heart what it is, and I think it's huge, and what you guys are going to have to do and solve. You know, and a lot of us are nervous, you know, where it's going to affect our livelihood and living down the road, what directions go, you know, and you have a lot of decisions to make, you know. And I hope a big part of this comes down to education with the reefs, our enforcement, and all the things that are going to help things. The mooring buoy, I know Hank and the guys are involved with all the doing the mooring balls, more balls, more no anchor zones with the reefs, and trying to keep the divers and the fishermen. We've done a real good job about having no dive zones, no fishing zones, excuse me. With the divers, I think that's an important thing, trying to keep things separated, you know, and trying to keep it different entities, you know. And I just hope everything keeps moving forward. We can keep making a living, and you know, after 30 years, there has been a big change, and I hope things change for the better and keep going forward. And I hope also, too, if they ever ask for our input, you know, we're in the Upper Keys Charter operation. We're not affiliated, but we are there. You know, input we can offer down the road and stuff. So, with enforcement and education and stuff. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brandon Jimenez.
How you doing? My name's Brandon Jimenez. I've been down in the Keys for 25 years. I'm an avid free diver. I own a charter boat named Sea Spirit. I've had it for the last 5 years. I'm in the beginning of my career. I got all my eggs in one basket. I've seen a lot of changes in the water quality down here. I fished in the backcountry. I fished all over the Keys. I could definitely see a change. We don't think that closing everything off is, closing that big area in Key Largo is the answer. We'd like to see more law enforcement. I'm out in the water almost every day and rarely see these guys. I mean, I can count on my hand how many times I've been pulled over in the last 10 years, you know. So we want to see something change. Maybe expand some of the dive areas, protect, you know, a little bit of expansion. Water quality is a real big deal to us. I mean, there's reefs that I've been diving for 20 years, and the inshore reefs that we've seen change. You know, we've seen algae go bloom over them and stuff like that, and we've seen the water change. I've seen it with my own eyes. So, you know, we'd like to see water quality. We got a lot of things that are above us that we can't control going into the water, sewage and whatnot, Lake Okeechobee and all that. So for me, it's very concerning because I got my whole life ahead of me with my business. A lot of the things that you guys are talking about doing would almost put me out of business in some ways. A lot of my customers are not going to want to come back. So there's got to be some sort of happy median for us. And that's what we want to see. We want to see a good solution. And that's it. That's all I really got to say. Thank you.
And Blair. Thank you.
Well, thanks for letting me speak. I'm Blair Witherington, research scientist with the In-Water Research Group. We've presented in the past to the council about some of the sea turtle surveys that we've conducted in the Keys. And one of the areas where we have extensive sea turtle data is the little box west of the Marquesas, called the Marquesas Turtle Zone. I just want to make some comments on that because we feel Alternative 4 is appropriate for that zone. One thing you should know is that maybe not very many of you have been out there, or if you have, you consider it as not a very remarkable place, and you wouldn't consider it very remarkable. You go out there, it's a lot of undersea sand dunes until you see turtle heads popping up. There are quite a lot of turtles out there. In fact, that box in the blueprint is circumscribed by the transects that we conduct to count turtles there. It's one of the ways to count turtles, to do these line distance transects. And that's where we get the data that shows that there are a lot of turtles there. In fact, there's greater density of foraging green turtles than any place in the U.S. And that's not just the Keys, not just Florida, not just the continental U.S., but the entire U.S., Puerto Rico, and Hawaii. There are a lot of green turtles out there. So I know it's a topic of discussion amongst the council, and there are some legitimate questions that arise. One being, don't we have enough turtles? And not to be flippant, the answer is no. Now, of course, from an ecological perspective, we don't have nearly the densities of green turtles that we once had. From a population biology perspective, no, we don't have enough green turtles. Green turtles are recovering, absolutely. You've all seen more green turtles swimming around, but they are not recovered. And the consensus amongst the federal agencies are it's not time to let up on conserving sea turtles and reducing threats. And I mention this because there are some key threats that can be directly addressed by that Alternative 4 in this zone. Key threats to sea turtles involve boat strikes. That's the most common recognizable cause of death of sea turtles in the Keys and in Florida. So slowing boats down in that zone certainly could help a great deal. Another is entanglement in trap lines. I wrote a book on sea turtles and picked an image of a green turtle that was held underwater by a trap that we recovered right inside that box that's in the blueprint. It's not common out there, but it does happen. So just wanted to weigh in on the appropriate nature of Alternative 4 for that particular zone out there west of the Marquesas.
Thank you, Blair. If we could also get Spencer and Thomas to come. Thank you. Go ahead, Charles.
My name is Charles Causey. I live in Alamorada. I'm on the Sanctuary Water Quality Steering Committee. I was a member of the South Florida Water Management District Board for a while. And my comment is that, or comments start with, people generally don't like to change. People push their arms against change, and that's what we've got to do here. We've got a sanctuary that's deteriorating. The resources are deteriorating. We've got a finite amount of them. We've had them always. And we have twice as many plus fishermen. We have 4 times as many boaters as we had 30 years ago. So there's this huge amount of pressure on the resources, and in order to have some sort of future for those resources, we've got to do more to protect them because it hadn't worked so far. Plus, my background's in economics. It's not in, you may have guessed by now, not in environmental issues historically. So I look down the road 20 years from now, and I look at economically how viable the Keys will be as a choice for people who want to recreate, whether it's diving or fishing or whatever. If there's no resource here to warrant them tripping here, they won't come. They'll go some other place. So it's this very big economic question too. One of the areas that when I look at this, and I've been through the blueprint like everybody else probably has too, I see one common theme. We have a lot of users. They all have an axe to grind. They all want to keep things the way they were, but we can't do that. And all of us users have got to give something up. To make this work, it's got to hurt that we can't spend as much money in our favorite spot, that maybe we have to give up an economic piece of the puzzle too, a slight bit. But I think we can work those things out. When all the dies are in and been cast, and we can take a look at something that's very, very, very vital to a group, that may be, as an example, pole control out-of-speed areas for some of the guide fishermen, or being able to anchor for charter boat captains. Maybe there are ways that they can give something to the pot and we give them something back. And I think that's what we all have to do in looking at this. Whether we're recreational fishermen, divers, whatever, we have got to give we want something badly. Well, then, are you willing to give up a little bit to get it? And the thing that you want to get, is that going to be something that is so bad for the resources that you're not going to be able to? We need to all look at that, though. A couple of things here that has been brought up by certain people. We do need marine reserves, no question about it. We need big ones, not a lot, couple. And if you read the work done by Jerry Alt, one of the chief scientists at Rosensteel, and Colin Roberts, and Jim Bonsack, if you read the work done by them, you will see that the dry tortugas and some of the areas in Central Florida on the water have had great success with marine reserves, tremendous success.
Thank you, Charles.
So we need those, and we also need to protect the shorelines by having in alternative for having the 300-foot designation off all areas, islands and shorelines. That is very, very important. That will help a great deal to protect fisheries and shallow water habitat.
Thank you very much, Charles. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
If you do have more to comment, please submit that to regulations.gov. Okay. Thank you. Spencer?
Hey, thank you. I'm Spencer Slade. I sat out here in this group of fine people for 6 years on the First National Marine Sanctuary Planning Council, and I did it just like you are, and just like I've heard all of you say, to make a difference, to make a change, to help save our reef. And I've seen little happen, and I'll tell you exactly why. It's been alluded to all through a lot of your speeches, some directly, some indirectly, and that's water quality. I want everybody to write down 2 words: water's journey. That's a PBS series that I did with my deceased best buddy, Wes Skiles, 20 years ago. It's a whole series of them that aired, and they still air, on PBS. What we did, we started up in the springs, in High Springs and Cave Country, whatever you call it, where all the beautiful springs are, dropping dye, a very well-financed program privately and through Tallahassee. And we followed the dye through the lake, out both sides of the state, all the way through. I mean, this was almost a year and a half work, following the dyes with kayaks through the Everglades, right out here in the front. And if you don't think you're standing on a sponge, you're smoking something. The state of Florida is lime rock. It's a sponge. And the water from there comes here. No matter what we do out here, it will never make a difference. Like I said, I started on the Sanctuary Planning Council 90, and I go out there and dive 5 times a week, and I don't see a lot of change, a lot of better. We've got to continue to do what we're doing. We've got to put more mooring balls. That's great. We don't want to tear up the reef with anchors. We've got to have better channel markers. We've got to have coral restoration. But of course, anybody diving out there has seen what a hurricane, whatever that one was 2 years ago, did to our reef, destroyed it. We've got to have better enforcement, and these guys will do that. But guess what? They got no money. They need 3 times the amount of money they got right now. So we got to get them more financing. And we've got to get proactive with the government. I always hear from everybody, and I heard it when I was on the Sanctuary Council, we don't have any authority up in Tallahassee. Well, we need to, everyone in this room, write 50 letters this week to every one of our legislatures and Ron DeSantis and bitch about the water quality coming out of Lake Okeechobee. You can't ever argue with anybody that the red tide was not an effect of water quality from Big Ag and Big Sugar. You can't tell me, when I was on the Sanctuary Planning Council and flew over the bay and saw pea green water literally killing millions of our pink shrimp, wiped out the fishery in the bay for about 3 years. Shark River was literally 72% or parts per million saltwater. Shark River is an estuary, 32% is ocean water. So that is a fact. All we want to do out here, all we want to try out here will come to nothing if we do not proactively fight water quality all the way to Tallahassee, guys. And I want us to keep doing this stuff.
Thank you, Spencer. Thomas? And then also let's get the next two speakers, Nate and Steve, queued up, please.
I'm Thomas Fay. I've owned a home in Layton for 39 years. And I was rather surprised to see the very restrictive area that's proposed in the Long Key Tennessee Reef Spa area in alternatives 3 and 4. It seems extremely restrictive, and it's not equaled anywhere else in your proposals all up and down the Keys. It comes from right on the shoreline of Long Key and goes all the way out to Tennessee Reef Lighthouse. And it really is disruptive to the local area of Long Key itself. It affects the residents, it affects the businesses there, it'll affect the fishermen there, it'll affect people coming down here to do fishing. People will probably avoid coming into Long Key in that area because of a restricted area that's so large right outside of Long Key, where they normally would come and go fishing. I find it's rather unfair and discriminatory against Long Key. And I just wanted to come here and voice my opinion. I do appreciate all the work that this committee does. And if the spa area was cut down and put further out toward the reef, it would probably be effective, and it wouldn't be so restrictive to the and detrimental to the community of Long Key. Thank you very much.
All right, Nate.
So I've been up since 4:30, so I may not be as eloquent or as composed. I'd like to echo some of the similar things already said and well said. I'm in a place, and I recreate now professionally for a living. I teach people about our resources, and I take people fishing. And today I had a 92-year-old guy. His wife was 87, and their son was in his 50s. I'm 40. I've worked a different life, and my background is I'm now doing what I love. But every day I talk to people and I try to educate them about issues. And the three main points that I would leave behind are water quality. I mean, it's been going on so long, and it's not discussed by Everglades National Park. There's no public campaigns that, I mean, it doesn't seem, it may be getting some better, but I see every day that I go out, basically, like I assign rules, we pick up the trash. I do the best to teach people, you know, why we don't damage the bottom. That's where things grow and everything starts, and I do my best to pass on what I know about our resource. And then also it's deteriorating, and I may have to reinvent and pick up a new career. We're all slightly greedy in that we all want to continue to do what we do. I do it for a love. I do it because it's what I really love. It's what I've loved since I was a kid. I differentiate taking people out and showing them Everglades National Park, nearshore waters and reefs from commercial fishing. I have friends in this room that do commercial fish. I think they're two different things that should maybe be treated different. I think they have different impacts. I'm a member of the Upper Keys Guides Association, and ultimately I echo their sentiment, and I'm on board with them as well as the Lower Keys. And I'll pass the rest of my time on to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go slow. First of all, I just want to thank you all for your hard work on what you're doing on our behalf. My name is Steve Friedman, and I have been a resident and fishing guide for 20 years. I come to you today from a unique perspective. I was an alternate member of the Sanctuary Advisory Council, so I know how passionate you all are and how hard you try to make everyone happy. I'm also a former candidate for state representative from this district, and I decided to run because of the state's lack of priority to water quality and the urgency to right that wrong. I'm currently the Commodore of the Florida Keys Fishing Guides Association, one of the oldest conservation organizations in the state of Florida. The Guides Association was one of the original architects of the Everglades Management Plan and has been there since the beginning of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. By and large, one of the first groups to recognize and fight for the importance of water quality, as alluded to by Will Benson earlier. As much as our organization would like to chisel this restoration blueprint to benefit our own specific interests, we know that may be unreasonable. Compromise pains us as much as it pains every other stakeholder. But as professionals who work on the water every day, you may not receive more informed and unique feedback than from fishing guides. We are committed to analyzing and weighing in on the management of our local resources with objectivity and professionalism. There is no alternative that we see as being the preferred alternative, as it is written today in the blueprint. We will be providing in detail another alternative that is a combination of suggestions from most, if not all, of the 4 alternatives offered. And I urge the sanctuary to read those comments with the understanding of the experience that we bring to the table. A sample of some of those comments will be that we support many of the preferred alternative proposals regarding the Upper Keys, like the expansion of the wildlife management areas, as long as they allow for flats fishing. We support all no-motor zones proposed in the preferred alternative, with the understanding that they allow for idle speed, poling, and electric trolling motors. This will help prevent further prop skying and allow and protect shallow water habitats. We support sanctuary-wide prohibitions to discharge any material or matter from cruise ships. Why is this not already in place? We do not support the Long Key and Tennessee Reef Sanctuary preservation areas. Understanding the sanctuary's goal to protect massive, contiguous, and varied habitats, flats fishing does not damage any of these habitats or put undue stress on the fisheries. But a massive closure would add additional pressure on nearby fishing areas and would severely impact the economic potential of the flats fishing industry. We will encourage the sanctuary to increase the enforcement of rules already in existence and the ones created after the restoration blueprint becomes final. The flats fishing industry is already aligned with most of the sanctuary's management practices regarding marine use. Our boats have little if no impact on the habitats. Catch and release practices are almost standard practice, and flats fishing is rooted in quiet movement with very little disturbance, both audibly and environmentally. We recognize that the movement in conservation and restoration has shifted to a habitat-focused priority. With thousands of years of compiled experience on the water, we have unique insight with regards to habitat, and we stand ready to work with the sanctuary, but we cannot be excluded for unnecessary and ultimately inconsequential reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Dale Perez, and then if we could also get John and Gary lined up. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Captain Dale Perez. I have been a fishing guide in the Florida Keys for the last 51 years, most of my adult life. I am here to tell you that we really have to do something about water quality. It's very discouraging to go out and see the color of the water. Makes you sick. See the dead sponges floating around, dead fish, seagrass dead. Certain places, First National Bank, there's no seagrass. There's no more grass there. It's all mud bottom. Palm Lake, the same way, back in Everglades National Park. The same. I haven't seen the bottom in there in 3 years. But I'm also want to get up here because I spend a lot of time guiding at Long Key. I've tarpon fished there for over 50 years. They even have a bump named after me called Dale's Bump. We don't do any damage there. We pole a boat, we pole in from offshore, and when we leave, we pole out to deep water and leave. We fish for migratory tarpon, and I think if you close that area, it's going to put a lot of pressure, as Steve said, on other places and on the fishery. Please reconsider. Please don't close Long Key. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Tamura. I'm a Key. I wasn't born here in the Keys, but I got here as soon as I could. That was 25 years ago. Also a member and chairman of the Nearshore Water Committee as of recently. And one of the things that struck me today, just watching the conversation go around the table, is that by coming up, and I realize this is government, you have to do things the way government says you have to, but coming up with 4 alternatives, and 4 alternatives only, disenfranchised a lot of people, and that's why you're having a problem getting public comment from people, because they feel like it's a multiple choice question. Would you like a punch in the nose, a knee to the stomach, a kick to the groin, or none of the above? And, fortunately, we have a lot of people here to voice their comment tonight. But the alternatives all focus on geography, not hydrography. If we were talking about air pollution, would we be looking up or would we be looking down at the ground that the air is flowing over? The iconic reefs sounds like a really good idea, but it sounds like it also is a desperate plea to tourists that, yeah, we screwed up, we're sorry, but now we're making a comeback album, please come down and spend your money with us. If you have an aquarium that goes septic, where everything dies, you don't try to solve that problem by putting more fish in it. Now we're going to plant coral fragments in the same water that killed the previous corals and hope for the best? It doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up. There's even a story in the news right now about playing music to corals to, underwater to make them grow faster, which is hilarious. But they're good stories for people that want to come down here and visit for a week. But we're the ones that are stuck with the aftermath. We're the residents that moved down here on purpose, and we care about the environment, and we were brought here. We've got some very big, obvious reasons for the water problems that we have, and fertilizer runoff, phosphate mining, spraying Roundup to control aquatic plants in our freshwater lakes, over marketing of tourism, and definitely overdevelopment. And if you take a look at the board of directors for the FWC, most of them have a connection to one of these industries. We've got our own swamp to drain here, right here in our state of Florida. Education's important. Limiting access is important. And mooring balls is a great idea as well. But based on previous efforts of enforcement, you can't look somebody straight, it's hard to look somebody straight in the eye and say that we're going to double the rules, double the closed areas, but we're not going to do anything to enforce those rules. I mean, there's been a huge gap, and that's been brought up many times. I think what Spencer said is brilliant about the water, and some people have said, about we have an under-enforcement problem here. People should respect the water that we have down here, to the point where they're almost afraid to get into it because they don't want to mess something up. Instead, we've got reckless, all kinds of crazy things. I'm out of time, but thank you for all that you're doing, and thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you, John.
My name's Gary Sands. I'm that 120-year-old gentleman in there talking about. Not there yet, Jeff. Close. Not there yet. Anyway, I'm a lobster fisherman in Key Largo. I've started fishing with my father when I got out of school in 1960 in Key Largo. I'm still fishing there now. I've been here in front of this panel before, many a time. A lot of new faces. See Jeff there and a couple other guys I know. In Key Largo there's a dive capital of the world, and we fish in it, lobster fish in it. And we've been here before, when we explained to them, in Key Largo, we can't go behind us because we got Everglades National Park. There's no place, you can't fish back there, can't lobster fish. The only place we can fish is out there in the sanctuary, go northeast and southwest. That's the only way we can go here, either out to deeper water. Now, the sanctuary comes along, and they want a no anchoring zone from Molasses Reef Light all the way to Carrotsford to the Whistling Buoy. No fishing, no anchoring from 90 foot to 300. That's our fishing area. We have no place else to go. We ask them, please don't do that. I mean, there's more fishermen here besides me. Anyway, we disapprove of any changes, from Alligator Reef Light all the way to the Whistling Buoy, and I'm going to tell you why. Because what's going to happen now next, mark my words, and you know for a fact too, maybe Sarah, that Biscayne National Park is going to take over. Whenever this thing goes down, they're going to jump in. They're going to say no lobster fishing up there too, just like it is here in the sanctuary. We've moved we fished lobster fish all away from all the coral areas there is in Key Largo. So now you have no place to go except out, and that's where we're at. So we say no because we fish in John Pennekamp State Park. We fought for that in 1960s, 1970. They wanted to take John Pennekamp State Park away. We couldn't lobster fish in that. We fought that. 23 of us went to Tallahassee one day. Many meetings, we got that. Now what we do now in your place, in the John Pennekamp State Park, we borderline fish. We borderline around everything. And that's what we do with you all. So we're asking you all, please don't take no more from us, just leave us alone. The dive industry can do what they want. Everybody can do what they want. Just leave the lobster fishermen alone. How much time I got left? Okay, 28 seconds. Listen, we've got an injection well up there in Key Largo. I don't know if anybody's ever did a study on that to see what happened, what's going on with it. And has anybody ever did a study on the reef itself after Irma hit it? Because the reef all it is a rubble pile. The whole reef, the whole 20, 30-foot reef tract, I fish in it. I fish around it, by it. It's rubble. Somebody needs to take a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
One more thing here. My friend's not here. He's from Florida Keys Commercial Fishermen Association. I was hoping you all to have a map here, like one of these things here, with a big map where all the places we can fish, lobster fish, and then with the expanded areas you want to see what we have left. There's nothing. So that's why we oppose everything. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We recognize that the Florida Keys are bounded by the Gulf of Mexico to the north, and the South Atlantic to the south. We also recognize the Keys are made up of the upper, middle, lower Keys and Key West, and are different from each other in certain ways, and therefore should be managed as such. We also realize, too, that management decisions should be based on valid, peer-reviewed science, which is readily available. In addition, the same decisions should be based on the good assessments of water quality and the amount of water coming to us from South Florida. Also, in this equation, we must pay attention to the water usage of the municipalities, agriculture, and the fertilizer industry to the north of us. There needs to be a mindset change from the management by takings to an economic impact-based decision-making process. We, the people of the Keys, are the ones directly affected by the rules and regulations, not our visitors. We don't need any more regulatory takings, because in 2014, the South Atlantic Fisheries Council and the Gulf of Mexico Fisheries Council, in partnership with commercial fishermen, created 60 areas on the coral reefs which prohibit commercial fishing. At this time, we need no more new regulations. In addition, the extension of the southern boundary is of an extremely important consideration. On paper and in the blueprint, there are no specifics as to the extent of the boundaries. We believe that they are quite possibly many more miles offshore than that they are today in the status quo today. In closing, there must be a decision-making mindset in the realm of science-based, water quality-based, and economic impact-based information and data, which has not been the case in the past many years, or now for that matter. Vote alternative 1, status quo. Thank you.
David Helton should be next, and then if we could have Alex and Elizabeth queued up, please.
You can take him out.
Okay, we'll go right to Alex then, please.
All right. I'd just like to say thank you to the Sanctuary Advisory Council for letting us come here to speak today. This is my first time at any one of these meetings, and outside of my coworker Jess, who spoke earlier, I'm the youngest person to have come up here by about 20 or 25 years, so I think that's kind of interesting as well. I'm up here representing the Coral Restoration Foundation, which I think a lot of people in this room at least have heard of, if not know very well. And we've heard a lot from the fishermen in this community, and for good reason. They're experts at what they do down here. But I want to speak a little bit about what we do at CRF and what we're experts in, and that is coral growth and coral restoration in the Florida Keys. And one of the things that I know a lot of us are very well aware of, because it's been brought up in just about every speech up here, is water quality. And certainly there's a lot that needs to be done for water quality in the Keys. There's no denying that. But one of the things that we see in our work that we've become experts in is that you don't need to solve every single problem that the Keys environments face in order to make them a little bit better. So when we go and we outplant coral on any of the reefs down here in the Keys, especially in the upper Keys, what we see is that we don't need perfect water quality. Yes, it helps a great deal, but if you can alleviate just some of the stressors that these corals have to go through every single day, they're under increasing pressures from any number of things. But if you can get rid of just one or two of them, doesn't even have to be the biggest ones. We don't have to solve water quality tomorrow. But if you give them a chance, they're incredibly resilient animals, and that's why I love working with them so much. The 4 years that I've done at CRF have been the most fulfilling and rewarding work that I've ever done before. And the reason for that is because we see it working. There are reefs that we go to now that would not have coral on them if not for the work that we did. And I don't say that to brag. I say that with a lot of sadness in my heart, because I wish that that was not the case. I wish that there were natural corals still there on those reefs. But the fact of the matter is, what we've done at our organization is given hope for the future. We have created some of these arcs that were alluded to earlier, and we've given a chance for, at some point down the road, when we do fix these monumental challenges, to have something there that can start to grow naturally on its own. And for that reason, I'd like to push back a little bit on some of the ideas that have been shared here today about how nothing is going to change if we don't fix water quality or address some of these bigger issues. I see every day that things are changing for the better. Even though we still have a long road ahead, I think that a lot of the alternatives proposed by the sanctuary, especially in options 3 and 4, are things that would go a long way towards helping our natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Elizabeth? And then we have Walter and Diane up next.
I'm Elizabeth Ewald, resident and homeowner in the Long Key area since 1994. I sincerely care about the area where I've learned to fish and snorkel these waters. I really do want to protect our marine environment, but I don't believe your preferred proposal is the way to do that. The Florida Keys Marine National Sanctuary was established in 1990. The sanctuaries established then have been in a decline for the past 3 decades. If the sanctuaries had provided positive outcomes to date, I would consider the proposal that you prefer. Management by the Marine Sanctuary has produced no positive change, very little protection, enforcement, nor education. I believe education is key. A mandatory education program created by the Marine Sanctuary would better serve this purpose. This will help people to understand how they are impacting the waters and educate them in a more meaningful way. I believe learning to really manage the sanctuaries already in place would be a better use of your money, resources, and skills. I am opposed to alternatives 3 and 4, especially Long Key, Tennessee Reef Spa.
Thank you. Walter Rentz?
I'm Walter Rentz from Upper Keys. Half as old as Gary. I've got a lot of hours on the ocean, and it's a green soup. It's terrible. It's out on the reef. It's behind the reef. Sometimes it's in the middle of the bank. It's terrible. It's killing everything. But I know you can't do anything about it. The injection well, we need to put dye in there and find out where that injection well water's going. We were told we put the sewers in, and because they were leaching out. Well, what happens when you pressurize it from up? Is this pushing this crap up? We need to check that really strong because we haven't seen the bottom of Key Largo in a long time. Long time. And I got a suggestion about the coral foundation thing. I think they got a great idea. Why don't you take these spalls you already have and plant these trees on it, not away from it, where they got to harvest it, bring it up into the air, transport it into a different water temperature, and then glue it to the bottom. Grow it there. Right on top of the spots. Close them if you have to. Don't let anybody in there but the coral people. Let them grow it. Time to harvest. Right there. Boom. Move the trees to another one. It's just a suggestion, but water quality. Do it. Oh, that the dry rocks. I need that little sluway in there. Both sides. Those nice sand lakes. At times I do good in there. And the divers, they got that spot right there, and they got that spot right there. I want that spot there, and I want that spot there. So does Gary, and so does Ernie, and so does my son, Michael. We just keep putting these spots in there. Let's do something with the ones we already have. Let them put the trees on them. See what happens. Because they're a disaster anyway. So. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Walter. Diane?
Hi, my name's Diane Harbaugh. I've lived here 35 years. I work in the fishing industry, and I'm a member of many organizations out there because I care a lot about what we got going on out here. I wanted to speak to a couple of interesting facts that I have learned since this process started. One of them is about the sanctuary's ability to shut down any or portion or all of the sanctuary if they deem necessary. Right now they have a 30-day up to 180, and if I'm not mistaken, you can renew that one more time. And the new plan shuts that down from 60 to 360 days. And if I'm not mistaken, you can renew that one more time. And that's if there's an area where they feel that it just has to be closed. But there's nothing to say what that area is or why. It's a natural disaster. I'd like to speak a little bit about mooring buoys. Because you can't maintain what you have. You're going to make areas bigger. And then you're going to put more buoys in, but I heard it in Key Largo, we don't want to put too many in because it draws people. And so we can't maintain what we have. So it concerns me we're going to make these huge areas and not be able to, let alone put But my neighbor, let me talk about the choices.